What's going on, everybody? BobbyFi back with my man, Sheets. My main man, Sheets. He's back. We've had some conflicting trips. I was in Boston, and I went for vacation, which was the least vacation ever. Sheets sounds like he had a great vacation. Catch up with him in a minute. I just really wanted to say before we get started, we have been getting a few more people we're adding on. We're trying to improve certain things on the site, and it's still a month free. So please check it out. Yesterday we were pretty on point with a lot of our plays. Didn't quite pan out for me in the big results way, but we were pretty on point. The only thing we were wrong on was the pitching, which so was the best of the world, but still kind of frustrating because I had some nice Corbin Flaherty lineups with all the Solak, all the guys you wanted, and you have 0 points from your pitchers combined. It doesn't help. Anyway, Sheets, good to see you. How was your trip? And then let's get into this slate.
Trip was great. I went to Kiawah Island, which is where they had the PGA Championship this year, and stayed at a nice resort with my wife. And I actually got a chance to also play the Ocean Course Monday, which was a lot of fun. Those of you that were following it, I was doing my stuff and getting my projections up there for you guys. Hopefully, you guys appreciated that. And I actually got like one pretty decent hit on baseball. I hit like third or fourth in the 88 or something like that a couple of days ago. MMA was good. I had a couple of good things yesterday. Oh man, you would not have been pleased with me. Just because if we had gotten ourselves together, I wouldn't have been able to talk you into it. But I put on some stuff. I put some lineups on before I got on the plane or whatever. Then I made some adjustments once I thought the lineups were set. They ended up with Texas, but with like two guys that didn't start and like 100% Upton. And all of that, I was basically had Fetty locked in.
Oh no, that's awesome. I mean, by the way, that's the weird part is it's like I was over the field on Fetty. I had Fetty and Brewbreaker. I had 20% or 15% Fetty, or no, I maybe even higher Fetty, but I still, you know how it is when you just don't find the right mix because then you're paying down for Texas, which is what I did. And it got me Corbin Burns and Flaherty, and it was just frustrating. I had
Fetty on like FanDuel too. But I forgot to check who was scratched. I ended up with all these Texas guys that didn't play. Oh well. But I'm ready. I'm now better prepared. For those of you that were a little frustrated, projections will be tighter. They will be updated closer to lock. And I figured I struggled with whether I should just say, I'm not going to be around for 4 days or just something's better than nothing. So I opted with the something was better than nothing. Hope you guys do well. And I really hope you guys took advantage of my freaking Tony Finau play because I sure didn't. And we'll get to that in our next video.
Yeah.
You ready for
let's get into it. Why don't you pull up your screen? Let me make sure that I've got, it's on there. Pull up your screen. And why don't you start with game one? I'm just going to open this door real quick because I've got a delivery being delivered for my breakfast. Sorry, it's been kind of a hectic morning over here. No shocker for how it's been lately, but so let's get into it.
Well, fortunately for me, I don't believe that the first game holds much interest for me. I mean, I guess from a narrative perspective, it would be fun to talk about Gilbert because I mean, as we mentioned the last time he played, he came out. He was coming off of the no-hitter game. And we talk about this a lot, and I've been betting against guys coming off no hitters since Juan Nieves pitched a no hitter for the freaking Milwaukee back in like 1986. Okay, so I that might actually be the correct year, but maybe not. In any case, there's no worse spot you could possibly be in than coming off of a no hitter in your first start, then going into Colorado. It just doesn't get much worse than that. So I think 0.7 fantasy points is probably his ceiling for that game anyway. I'm willing to throw that out. And I have to say that if I don't know, the guy's capable of throwing a no-hitter and he's only 6K, not exactly going against, Willie Stargell and Dave Parker for the Pirates. I don't know. I mean, I'm not particularly getting to him, but in my first slate breakdown back, I might talk up a couple of other dudes, maybe if I'm not getting to them. I don't know if I'm going to do it, but hey, if you guys want to pivot off of like Cabrera or something like that, you could do worse than a guy who's actually put up a good major league score. I don't know. I wasn't particularly getting to much of the hitting on either side, if that helps. Actually, that's not true. I'm sorry. I am, as always, getting to Pittsburgh as a value hitting stack. And that's where I'm at.
Yeah, this is an interesting spot here because I could very easily just brush this game aside and say whatever, bad teams, all this stuff. But I think you can make an argument for Gilbert. I think you can make an argument for Pittsburgh, and I think you can make an argument for Arizona. I know it's not like the best analysis, but I think what I will probably do is I might have some exposure to this game, and it'll probably be the guys who are going to be a little bit owned in this game. Well, I don't know if anybody, I don't think anybody's going to play Brian Reynolds. I'm always happy to take a shot with Brian Reynolds. I'm always happy to play Josh Rojas on the other side. Maybe Marte. I would consider like a mini stack here. Maybe even you get in a Moran or a Gamble. Stallings is a decent catching option. I think Peralta's cheap. Chavis should be leading off again, minimum cost on FanDuel. All of these guys are in play, but we're just going to have to decide by the end of the show, is this what we want to do? It's not a huge slate. So, I mean, it's not as big as it was yesterday. So there is some argument where, you could see these teams sort of coming through here. But I think maybe what I would be looking at is like maybe the two-man combinations of the guys I mentioned and with some potential Gilbert exposure. But I do have Gilbert on my list as well as the guys I just mentioned.
The other thing I'm going to start doing, by the way, again, you guys don't like it, like I say, turn the channel. But I am going to start talking about, again, like the teams that I have as my highest combination of value and leverage or whatever. It's kind of my number I talk about. Sometimes
I like that.
I'm not willing to pull it up yet. And I hate to do this to you guys, but with all I just said, it happens to be Pittsburgh. So that's what that is. Take that for what it's worth. You want to move on?
Yeah, I agree about all that. I just want to remind everybody, these teams don't have anything to play for. You're going to see some funny business out of them.
Okay.
There's some explosive. We have to pay attention to this MLB year, right? And that's partly what we're seeing with some of these pitchers. Teams that don't like St. Louis is on the borderline of not having to play for that much anymore. They didn't let Flaherty work through a jam coming back from an injury yesterday, and he pitched, an inning and a third. They never got a chance to get it back. So I
didn't even notice that.
That's what we're gonna. No, it's been happening every single day. We've seen the same story from teams that don't care. Sometimes it means they leave a guy in long and they want to just get him stretched out, which means he can combust, he can be explosive. And sometimes it means they just pull him out if there's any sign of any trouble because they don't want to hurt their young pitcher. So it's hard to figure out what it means, but there is definitely reason for narratives this time of the season in major leagues for the teams that are out of it, and those two teams qualify. So anyway, now let's switch over to two teams that are still fighting for things and things that matter. Zach Wheeler, Ryan Yarbrough, Philly, Tampa. That's sort of my issue with the Gilbert. I just think that I think Yarbrough is just every bit as good of a play as Gilbert would be at low ownership. I mean, at low cost, at low ownership too. We've seen, 2 out of his last 4 starts over 20 fantasy points. We know he's got somewhat of a ceiling. He gets to pitch in the National League instead of that tough American League East. But he's not the real guy in this game. I think Zach Wheeler is going to be a very tough fade for me today. You have Dan Bellino behind the plate, a good pitcher's umpire. Not to mention that Wheeler is, arguably he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. Somehow the fact that people still think he should be the Cy Young over Walker Buehler, you're going to have to explain that one to me. But other than that, I think that Wheeler is probably the top option, and I will be using a lot of them even against a good Tampa Bay offense.
I have Wheeler right now rated 4th, and overall, and the I think if we had to talk about kind of like the theme of the slate, you have a whole bunch of pitchers here, and if you had to put like kind of a theme on this, you have some guys that are really, really good, kind of semi-proven commodities against okay matchups like Wheeler, Woodruff, Robbie Ray, and Giolito, for example. And then you have guys like we'll get to them. You have like rookies with like upside in really favorable matchups. And then you have like kind of like wild cards that are in good matchups that have combustibility, also like Ohtani. I think it's a great slate. And I do like Wheeler as kind of a top whatever 5 or so pitcher. I don't think anybody's going to be that highly owned because I do think you can make cases for all the guys I just mentioned, for example.
Yep.
So I really think you just pick who you want, and I certainly am not going to argue with Wheeler. I would argue Wheeler.
I do think there's a good argument for him. I'll keep going, Sheets, but I'll make.
No, I was going to say, like, if you were just going to like say like who's going to get the most fantasy points, you know what I mean? I would say Wheeler probably over Woodruff, only because like something's up with these. I mentioned with these Milwaukee guys. You know what I mean? I don't know exactly what's going on, but
so I actually feel.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you, man. I thought you were. I'm sorry. I thought you were done. I wanted to.
I was just saying that. So for me, if I had to just say, okay, who gets the most fantasy points? Probably Wheeler. But that's I guess that's where I'll leave it. I didn't quite get to Yarborough, and I didn't get to any of the hitting.
So I think there is something to be said about the Milwaukee guys, but not the ones named Wheeler and Burns for me. I mean, we saw Burns really. I'm sorry, Woodruff and Burns. We'll get to that with Milwaukee, but I do think this is the kind of stuff you want to pay attention to this time of year. Now they're in a funny position because they're playing with a big enough lead of a gap that they can sort of, take it easy on some of the guys that they were working early in the season. At the same time, in Burns's case, he's fighting for the Cy Young. He's the one who actually really has a chance. Wheeler obviously is another one, but in a different game. But also you tend to give your aces. Teams aren't going to like you and want to come play for you very long if you're not going to let your aces go. And Woodruff is supposed to be the ace of the staff coming into the season. Now it's Burns, obviously. But I will say that I don't think Woodruff has won a game since July 1st or something.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
There's something. I think that maybe he's just really struggling. I do think Wheeler is a significantly better option, just for floor, for ceiling. I know he hasn't been quite as good lately, but just the consistency that he doesn't walk people and that he's always striking people out. He'll give up some hits for sure, but I feel good about that against a Tampa Bay team that will strike out. And I just don't think he blows up. He just doesn't really blow up hardly ever. He gets a tough Tampa Bay team, but a Tampa Bay team that strikes out a lot. A lot of good teams strike out a lot these days, and they're one of them. We saw it last night with the Yankees against Morton. You know what I mean? It was exactly the kind of game you think would happen. The Yankees put up some power, some home runs, and they also struck out 9 times in 5 innings or whatever it was. All right, let's move over to the Angels in Baltimore.
Yeah, the next 3 games on the slate are the most. I think you get the next 3 games right. I think from the pitching and the hitting, I think that you're going to be in business. We'll get to that. So like I said, first of all, Angels Baltimore. I think this game has just a lot of possibilities. I think Ohtani rates to be the best pitching value on the slate, and yet it's in Baltimore where balls fly. And Ohtani can make balls fly. So I feel as though, if Ohtani ends up being just uber chalk, which is possible, I certainly could try some Baltimore dudes against them. So I think this is a game that could produce some big fantasy points either way.
Yeah.
But look, from a percentage standpoint, I think Ohtani rates to smash more than Baltimore rates to smash. But yeah. And I don't like whoever is pitching for Baltimore, whether it's Kramer or Ellis or whoever it is. And I don't think I got to the hitting. No, I did not get to hitting.
So I like the case. I think there's an argument to be made for taking some bats against Ohtani here. And I think Ohtani's awesome. I think he's a really, look, breaking news, Shohei Ohtani is really good. He's only going to win the MVP by the biggest landslide in history, and he might do it against a guy who just barely misses the Triple Crown, which is really incredible. But he's been so good in so many, in every facet of the game, and his pitching has gotten better as the season's progressed. This guy's got a ERA under 3 with an 11 run in 1/3 of an inning outing. You know what I mean? It's pretty incredible. But on the flip side, you have an extreme hitters umpire, which is a little bit of a boost. I always like that in Baltimore. My Baltimore secondary stack was so good to me last night. I was very frustrated, Sheets. I had to make a 2v2 swap. That my 2 big frustrations, and I had to get rid of my my Marquez lineups, which really blew up some of my lineups, including my Renfroe exposure in my main build. So I had to change. I had to lower it down to Verdugo. But not to Verdugo. I'd lower it down to a different 2v2. And one of the things I took Mountcastle. I did have Severino in my lineup instead, which was a 1% play. But Mountcastle, of course, it's 2 home runs. And I had Urias, and then I had Santander, who combined for like 75 fantasy points. So it was really looking good. And I think this is another night where we can just use them for some value. I don't think I want to go for a crazy full hammer stack against Ohtani. But Urias, DJ Stewart, Santander stand out to me as the top plays. But DJ Stewart and Santander's being significantly better than the other ones. I don't know what Santander did to make these guys hate him. but I mean, look, he's swinging a good bat right now. I sort of like Baltimore's offense because they, they're used to being down. They're used to playing against guys who are better, with the Yankees and Tampa Bay and Boston all the time. They fight hard. They were down by 11 runs. I was worried about losing their players, and they came back and almost, got back in the game basically. I think the Angels are an awesome stack. It feels bad to do without Ohtani. But look, they just scored 13 runs last night, and it was certainly no help to Ohtani. He didn't contribute to one of those runs. So I know it still makes a difference in the lineup and all that stuff, but he's going to play. I mean, I think we should be stacking the Angels, even with Ohtani, even without being able to use Ohtani. It's tough to do. Maybe it's a mini stack.
That's really hard, right? I mean, he's going to eat up those RBIs, isn't he? I mean,
well, he didn't last night. They scored 13 runs.
Well, I don't understand that, but I mean, it just kind of relates to that. It's kind of hard to. Okay, no, I mean,
I hear you, but I think that's what I think you're thinking is what everyone else will think,
right.
And I think that makes it an open. Jared Walsh is one of the best overall plays on the board. If he's not popular, everyone's making a mistake, in my opinion. He's an awesome play. Max Stassi is one of the best options at catcher. I don't care that Upton didn't play yesterday. I'll play Upton. You could include Brandon Marsh for cheap. I don't like the stack as much as I did yesterday so much because I could use Ohtani, where I'm going to play Iglesias today probably, but I might consider him on FanDuel. I like Joe Adell coming into his own, having a nice game. I think he's starting to hit the ball a little bit better, and he's cheap. I he's batting at the bottom of the order, but I still think that there's merit for this stack. This is a really high run total. We're losing the top hitter because we can't use him, but I think there's a really good chance that these guys go off. So maybe you want to mini stack it because we can't use Ohtani, but I think they're one of the best stacks on the slate.
Yeah, I don't know what I was looking at. I actually do have. It's so funny. I actually do have them tied for 4th and 5th. I don't know why I say I didn't get to them. So yeah, I do have them tied for 4th and 5th. The guys I had listed, by the way, were Upton, Walsh, Marsh, Stassi, and Adell. Those were the 5 I had.
All right, you ready to talk about the next game and try and explain to me why Robbie Ray can just go out there and keep throwing gems and keep having his price lowered?
So I have possibly a terrible take in this game.
I might be on the same page as you. I really am excited to hear what you have to say.
Okay,
go ahead. Sorry.
So here's my terrible take. I'll just start. Well, first of all, both pitchers are going to rate to be really, really strong plays. Well, I shouldn't say that. Like Giolito is actually not projecting all that great. He never does. Ray's projecting to be a top player on the slate. You certainly make cases for both of them. Here's my just kind of terrible take. And I want to say came up with it, but I put it to work a couple of times, and I actually put it to work. I played Lance Lynn the other day. I don't remember. I actually don't even remember how he did.
He did well. I was on the same page as you with that one. Yeah,
he did. And here's my terrible take. My terrible take, and people can look at the stats and like try to prove me wrong, because I really haven't looked at it, is that Toronto is actually not that good. And that they really are not a good hitting team at all. And you could don't interrupt me till I'm done. And that all their stats were inflated based on them playing in the Little League Park when they were in Buffalo. And that was my take going into, because I started playing them a little bit once they started to leave Buffalo, and they just never did anything. Every once in a while they hit a couple of good solo home runs for me to keep my interest, and they would lose the game 6-3 or whatever it was. But I don't know. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to pull up Vladimir Guerrero. I'm not even looking at fantasy points. All I want to do is when I look at the number of runs the team has scored recently.
Well, no, I can give you every number off the stat. They're by far the coldest team in the major leagues. They're hitting 170 over the last 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
So nobody's making an argument. Everybody knows Toronto is ice cold.
Oh, right? Okay. So that's not my hot take. Okay,
but I think the hot take that you're taking that they're not good, I think and I do think that's a terrible take.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to say Vladimir Guerrero isn't good, you can take away his numbers at home, and he's still the best hitter in baseball this season by a pretty wide margin.
Fair enough.
It's so I don't agree with them not being good, but I will say they are absolutely ice cold. We saw what C's did to them last night on a one of those where you wish you had 150 entries because you probably we always got to get a little C's because he's got the upside. It's hard to see that upside against Toronto because even if you don't think they're good, even in this period, they just don't strike out that much. They did last night, but they don't strike out that much in general. I thought you were going to go a totally different direction. Although I think that what you said is actually more common thinking than what.
Okay, I'm very glad because I wasn't aware that people were talking about that. Okay.
And they still scare me because they're patient and they have some guys who are really patient who see the most pitches like Vlad, and they also do They just don't strike out. If they were, the Yankees with their strikeout numbers, that'd be very different.
But what I was going to get at is I was going to wait on you for this one, because if you told me that I can get a Giolito, a good umpire for him, I would just freaking lock him in here. I think that he'd be an incredible tournament play. But only if he got the good umpire, because like you said, Toronto does kind of like take pitches, and I need that call.
It's a neutral umpire, and I think that actually is fine. I think both these plays, our pitcher, are fine. I think I really think that this is a spot where we have to try to take a shot with the White Sox stack.
Okay.
I love Robbie Ray. I've made it very clear. I think he's fixed a lot of his mistakes. I think that he still is a guy who's going to give up home runs. Look at his last time out. He put up 35 fantasy points, still give up 2 home runs. He will give up power. He's been way better at limiting the power this season. I'll give him that. He also will allow stolen bases. Oh, no, he didn't give 2 home runs. He had to give 2 stolen base last game. I read the wrong thing. This guy, even during this great season that he's having, went through like a 9-game stretch where he was giving up like 2 to 3 home runs a game, even just solo home runs, but still. I think this White Sox team and the history of lefty crushing that they've been able to do puts them firmly in play here. And, you can play the cheapos. Luis Robert, this guy has just been crushing the ball. Andrew Vaughn is 3K. He's been good against lefties. Eloy Abreu obviously is a monster against lefties. And then Tim Anderson is one of the best in the business against lefties, also gets the home base upside. It's a shot where I really want to take a shot on the White Sox here tonight. And at the same time, Robbie Ray may end up in some of my big buy-in lineups. So I think there's an argument to be made either way. But I really, really, really like the idea of getting off the board with the White Sox stack, and I think it will be off the board. I wouldn't stack against Giolito on the other side. I could say the other thing about the other side. All I'll point out is the pricing is starting to come down enough for Toronto, whereas if you end up with a Bichette one-off, if you end up with a Teoscar or basically anyone but Vlad, who's the only one who's expensive at 58, really expensive 5,800. All the other guys are under 5K now. And you've got Corey Dickerson at 2,700 against a pitcher in Giolito with all of his strengths is another guy who gives up a ton of power.
Absolutely.
Pitch to contact, he gives up tons of power.
Absolutely.
I like the idea of getting sort of like what I was saying about the Arizona game. I want some, but in this game, I want the power pieces from it. And I would even include Dickerson as part of that. So I'm going to have interest in both sides of this game, but especially the White Sox. Maybe it won't be a full stack against Robbie Ray because he's been good enough, but I think we can get some serious leverage, and the early projections on Ray at 15% ownership are just not going to be accurate. He's going to be more owned than that, in my opinion. I think Ray and Wheeler is the natural build, but the White Sox do strike out. There's upside both ways. I really think that the White Sox, this is the kind of play you can make to try and win a tournament.
By the way, I saw something flash on my screen. You mentioned that Florida, they didn't let him work out of a jam. He's back on the IL, by the way.
Yeah, and he got hurt. So he got hurt. That was what it was. Okay. I didn't know that what it was. It was frustrating, whatever it was. Very frustrating.
So part of the reason why I don't think that Robbie Ray's ownership is going to get out of control, or anybody's really, is this next game is a fun game from a DFS perspective, I think. So you got 2 young dudes, you got 2 young dudes in like the greatest pitchers park ever with 2 teams that really can't hit, and it's gonna, I don't know what to do. You got Cabrera, who's 5K, who, if this were like, it's one of those weird things, but this is like a 4 or 5 game slate, he'd be like literally 80% owned, right? And you have the risk associated with all rookies. Part of them is being, how long are they going to let them go for openers? And, I haven't heard any managers speak. And second of all, they're freaking rookies, man. You know what I mean? Like anything's freaking possible. And then yet on the other side, you have your Josiah Gray, who's, less of a, a little less dynamic maybe, but him coming from the Dodgers.
Whoa, less dynamic.
Well, I'm getting to it. But I was about to say, but for the Dodger organization, so you know more about him and his dynamics than most people. But all I'm hearing all day long about is Cabrera's like the next freaking thing to sliced bread. But Josiah Gray had an incredible strikeout rate coming from the minors also. And Cabrera
didn't. I don't understand what people are looking at numbers. Cabrera did not have a good. He pitched well in the minor leagues, but he has a 22.7% strikeout rate. The major league, and yes, they strike out less in the minor leagues than they do in the American leagues, in the major leagues. The major leagues is at over 25%. He's below average on that.
I heard something. I had heard something else. I heard 20% swinging strike rate and 37% strikeout rate. So maybe I just heard it wrong.
I'm looking at the AAA thing, but I'll double check that that's not just a small sample that I'm looking at. I do think the kid has got decent stuff. He has a 4.5K prop and he's 5K. That's good enough, like in general, to play against a Washington team. We're supposed to not, there's an argument for stacking Washington here.
Of course, that's what I'm saying.
But I'm not going to stack Miami. And I think that Josiah Gray, like, he's been really good. We can say whatever. He didn't, and people go, oh, look, he didn't strike hardly anybody out at, his last couple of games. He pitched against Toronto and Atlanta. These are two of the lower strikeout teams in the major leagues, and tough, whether you like Toronto or not, or whether they're struggling, it's still not the easiest matchup. In these starts, he went 6 innings, pitched really well. And then the start before that against Atlanta, he had put up 25. He had 10 strikeouts in that game. He's had to face Philly. He had he's had a pretty tough go of it in terms of his matchups, including his first start against the Giants. I'll just tell you, anybody who wants to think what the major leagues think of Josiah Gray, this is the centerpiece of a deal that sent Max Scherzer and Trey Turner, 2 of the top 20 players in baseball, to the Dodgers. So if you're the centerpiece of that kind of a deal, you better believe that people believe this kid is really good. He gets to face the best matchup in the major leagues tonight. I think he's an awesome play. Where he stands on the list of all the pecking order is a different conversation. They do have Nick Lentz behind the plate, who's not a great pitcher's umpire. At least that's what the plan is as of right now. It's interesting, man. I don't know. I don't know if I can. They seem to want to give Gray the leash, and they seem to want to let him do what he can do and get their Washington fans a little bit excited about something going forward. So I'm a big fan of Josiah Gray here. I don't know where he's going to end up for me, but I don't think the ownership gets out of line on him at all. And I think that there's a chance that you might see one of those first time, it's the first time he's seen them. Also, he's settled in. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he's the highest scoring pitcher on the slate. It really wouldn't. He's got dynamic stuff. So I'm a big fan of Gray in this matchup. And I think that my way of getting different with Hernandez might be to take a couple of the bats against him. There's no bat better to ever take because the guy is just the greatest. One thing I will say about Hernandez that he does a good job. Why maybe you don't want to fully stack
Cabrera, you mean?
Cabrera. I'm sorry. That's my bad. Shout out to Jose Fernandez. Rest in peace. Very sad. But I do think Juan Soto has got to be one of the best plays on the slate. I just wouldn't want to. I just think this guy just gets overlooked on every slate, and this is a slate where I'm definitely have Soto on my one-off list. Anyway.
I think Josiah Gray is a great play. I think Cabrera is a great play. I think Ohtani's a great play. I think Woodruff's a good play. I think we'll get there. I think Wheeler's a good play. I think Ray's a good play. I think that nobody's going to be that highly owned. I really don't. I think that you can make.
I think Ohtani will be, but I hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Ready to move?
Yeah. All right. So tell me. So I don't think that. Look, he's been
That's
better.
That's all I'm going to say about this game.
Go ahead.
All right. It is freaking hot out.
Yep.
It is really, really hot. There's a heat advisory in New York today and tomorrow. That's about all I'm going to say. I'm not getting to either of these teams, either hitting or pitching, but don't be surprised if the ball flies. With that said, Taijuan Walker's been good enough. Cueto's been good enough. I just can't get to anything in this game.
Yeah, so Taijuan Walker sort of righted the ship a little bit his last 3 starts after being, last 2 starts more so. He looked like a shell of himself there for a while. And I'm not using trying to be creative with my words. He was getting shelled. I think he found a little something back against the Dodgers, pitched pretty well back-to-back games. I don't look at his fantasy point total, but I still think that he can be attacked with lefties. And I think that the Giants have good ones and they're cheap. And we saw a little bit of that yesterday. I think this is a huge stadium upgrade even though the Mets are, we know that we know that it's not a great stadium for hitting. It's totally different in the late summer months because of the humidity and the heat, like you're mentioning. So Alex Dickerson, Brandon Belt, Lamont and Wade are definitely going to be guys you might want to factor in. Maybe you get to La Stella on FanDuel, but those are the 3 I'm looking at the most. And then you can always squeeze in the Yastrzemski or Crawford, who are pretty expensive. But I definitely think taking a couple of a shot at a home run or 2 off of Walker is not a bad way to go. On the flip side against Cueto, I'm just going to, I think this lineup's coming back to closer to full strength. So I have a little bit of interest in them. I don't want to I'll say who my favorites are at the end. But I think that if you're talking about individual bats, they did finally raise the price on Pete Alonso. But Alonso, Lindor, and Baez are make this lineup a little stronger, which gives a boost to me to guys like Conforto at 3,500. That's basically all I had to say for the Mets side. I think the Giants are more where you'd want to be personally, but I'm not playing the pitchers. And usually there's a time where I would have jumped at a 7,300 Taiwan Walker, and this is not the time.
All right, so I have issues this next game. Because in the name of true DFS, true transparency, I like to tell people what I'm doing. And I often tell people that sometimes, I'll put my numbers up and all numbers are what they are. And sometimes I will just either not play them, or I will sometimes just put my own opinions ahead of them. Sometimes my builds will just not even bring me to those teams because of their ownership or something like that. So I want to talk about this Minnesota-Boston game just a little bit. So I will tell you right now that my top overall value stack is Minnesota. And those players would be Kepler, Polanco, Donaldson, Arias, and Rooker. Okay. Mm-hmm. I will also say that they're looking to be a pretty highly owned bit of value. At least is my first look. I will tell you right now, I am not playing that. This would not be the first time that a value piece looked good against Pivetta, and I am just not interested. Pivetta, I think, is pitching very, very well. He came well. Look, his last game, whatever. He's won't be the first guy and last guy to get torched by the Yankees, I guess.
Yeah, and he got pulled quickly for the first time all season.
Yeah, and I watched him. Listen, I had Baltimore a couple of games ago where they were a great value piece against Pivetta. Pivetta just, gave up maybe a home run or whatever. He's been looking really good. And I'll tell you this: if this were a smaller slate and without better options, I would freaking play Pivetta here. I mean, you were all over Pivetta at like very, very low ownership, I think, for that game. Mm-hmm. And I think he did really, really well. And I think that if Minnesota really becomes that darling, like 3-man secondary stack that everybody wants to play, I think that you can make the case to play Pivetta. I don't know if I could do it with all those other options, but I will tell you this, that however much my builds get me in Minnesota, I'm probably going to force them out a little bit. The other thing I will say is on the other side of the coin, I don't think I'm going to be fading Boston. I think that Boston is probably rates as my top stack. I'm sure that they'll get a decent amount of ownership too. As hot as it is here, it's hot there also, and I think it's going to be difficult to get away from that. So Verdugo, Hernandez, Devers, JD, Schwarber, Bogarts, the usual suspects. I think they're going to be high owned as well, but I have a little more. I have difficulty getting away from that.
JD has looked absolutely hideous at the plate, really hideous. And other than that, everybody on Boston and Bogarts just killed me yesterday, but that was frustrating because it didn't matter how many at bats they got him. He actually hasn't been as good from the plate either. Did have a couple good games a few games back, but a little less struggling than JD. But JD looks lost at the plate. I've been watching these at bats closely. Somehow all these guys, the Boston guys who were supposed to be 30% yesterday, ended up like JD was 5% owned on DraftKings. Like, it was really weird. Nobody was owned the way that I thought they would be, except for Devers. I agree about the Boston stack against Ober and that bullpen behind them. I don't think Ober is the worst pitcher, though. I think this is not quite as good of a matchup as it was. And I think Jax is a better pitcher than Ober. But Ober, we've seen him just consistently sort of battle through games and, just do a good enough job to where he's not getting blown up. I think Schwarber is probably, maybe the best play, just price and everything considered, probably be the most popular as well. I think my next favorite would probably be Devers. And I don't mind, the rejuvenation of Travis Shaw. We've got back-to-back games with the home runs here and his first games in Boston and all that. You could use him for cheap on FanDuel, which I did in my main build last night. So that's how you get a little different. I do like Verdugo. Verdugo's been unbelievably good, by the way, just consistently hitting the ball, having big games. And basically, I think he's hitting somewhere around 330 or so over the last month, and has had some power in there as well. I don't mind him further down in the order, keeps the ownership a little bit lower on him. So those are the main guys I'm looking at. I will still play some JD probably if I'm getting these stacks, because I believe in talent wins over in the long run. And you can go back to the Renfroe with 2 home runs, but it's not like people are going to chase that because he's batting 7th. So there's a lot of ways to do this stack. I do agree that Boston is definitely one of the top stacks of the day.
What do you think of Pivetta or Minnesota?
I like Pivetta. And I will probably, I think that there's an argument to be made for Pivetta along with Giolito in a similar, there's basically the same price. I think Pivetta has upside. You do have mostly righties in the lineup against him, not the lefties that terrify me. But I like Pivetta and I like Kepler. I don't know that I want to stack Minnesota. I really look for lefty power against him. Arias is cheap enough if you want to get a mini stack, and Nick Gordon, I guess, or whatever if you want to get a full stack. But I think Polanco is going to stand out for people. He's cheap enough, sure. I have no problem with it. I don't love it. I think Kepler is the guy I would probably want the most exposure to against him, but I don't think I'll fully stack Minnesota tonight. I do like Donaldson's price as well. I agree with what you said about the pricing. All right.
So for me, this next game is the fun game. Honestly, this is. See, I'm not gonna kind of go by my numbers and just go over Minnesota, even though they're going to be whatever. But I'm totally willing to look at my numbers for this next one. I have Texas and Cleveland as like my third and fourth best stack from a value perspective, and they happen to be in the same game. So I'm gonna force a few of these game stacks in just in case. Just in case I'm right, just in case the wind's blowing out the way I need it, or just in case the umpire's just the way I need it. I'm gonna take a shot, and the same, I guess, similar Texas guys from yesterday. Adelis Garcia, Solak, Kiner, Falefa, Lowe if he gets back in. I don't know. Peters. I don't know. If I want to pay up for pitching, I think I can get away with this. And then on the Cleveland side, Cleveland's always like an interesting scenario because you have the two high price guys. Well, there's Ramirez and there's Reyes, and then everybody else is free, right? So you can make a fun stack without being one of those Pittsburgh stacks where it's like, oh, everybody stinks, man. You know what I mean? Like, right. I say Pittsburgh, you know what I mean? Like those stacks I end up with.
I got you.
Where I'm rooting for like 3 doubles and 2 singles, whatever it is. So you can put Ramirez in, put Reyes in, get that home run upside, and yet still be able to play your Mercados and Rosarios and Owen Miller, play him and
play Clement. You can play all of them.
Yeah, so I like this game. I like both teams from the hitting perspective.
Yeah, I'm still on the side that I think Plezak's actually a pretty decent pitcher, but I don't mind. Like, look, if they're going to keep making Adelis Garcia free, we're going to have to keep playing him. It just makes no sense why this guy is 2,800. They lowered his price 100 again. And I have a little bit of a spot for Peters, who actually did get me there finally. He almost hit one out, then he hit the ball, he rocketed one. I was getting frustrated because I had the rest of the Texas stack, and then he hit the 3-run homer in the 8th, which was nice. But Peters and Garcia are really cheap along with Lowe, and those are the guys I would use. I don't think, unless we get Pozo back in the lineup, that I'm going to play anybody else from this game. But I certainly think you can make an argument for it. I just don't want to fully stack against Plezak, so I would probably go 2 or 3 man. Cleveland, I do have as one of, if not probably my top stack. I think there's a lot of ways you can do it too. It's a team that I'm pretty familiar with. And what I would just say is that the natural way people are even going to stack this, even when they play them, they're not going to be playing enough Reyes. And I think that whether you're mini stacking, whatever you're doing, I think you'd want to get to Franmil Reyes because of his price. I think it's unlikely that people get up to him as much as they probably should. And I would say you want to try and get some Reyes in your lineups. I think it's going to be easy to do without him. But I think Jose Ramirez, I love Mercado if he's going to be low owned. We'll see if Zimmer's in the lineup. We'll see how the lineup shakes out. Owen Miller. It's really going to depend on how the lineup shakes out for some of these things. You could even use the cheap hedges at catcher if they don't play Ramos today, which you think you give Ramos a day off. But Rosario, Ramirez, and Straw are the obvious ones. I think that the guys who I would like to get some Reyes in there, and I would like to get some Mercado. Those are my
I am going to invent a statistic and data which very well may not be true, but I'm going to suggest that it's the only time it's happened. How about that? So Adelis Garcia, let's just say he's 2,700 because he was 2,700 4 games ago, whatever it is. Yeah. So I bet you this is the first time and will be the only time that someone has a ratio of home runs to fantasy points of over 1. That would be my suggestion. That he's 27 home runs and 2,700. I'm trying to think if it's possible for that to happen. Like, first of all, you'd have to have 40 home runs and be priced under 4K, which you tell me when that happens.
Yeah, it doesn't really happen that often, but there have been a few outliers.
Really?
The year Chris Davis hit, it was one of the last years he had that was good. I think he hit like 37 home runs, and he was
okay.
But that's that. But the funny part about Garcia is it's not like he doesn't do other things too. Like, look at his average. his fantasy points per game are just beneath guys like Machado. You know what I mean?
Right.
And Machado's 5,800 and gets played every day, and no one plays Garcia, and he's 2,800. And anyway, so I'm a huge fan of Garcia. I totally agree. It's bizarre. I don't understand what they're doing. All right, let's talk about Milwaukee and Cincinnati. And this is, I guess, the Woodruff chalk. He does have the highest strikeout, he does have the highest K prop, I believe, on the slate, or tied for the highest with Wheeler. He has not looked right.
Dude, he's not looked right, and the Reds are like the greatest team ever.
And the Reds just don't strike out that much. Yeah, look what they did to Burns yesterday. Burns, I never thought he'd pitch 6 innings and only have 4 strikeouts. That guy's a strikeout machine. I'm very happy to fade Woodruff. We talked about a lot of good pitching, and as of right now, my plan is to do just that, fade Woodruff. And by the way, I actually think that straight up, I think I would take a bet that Castillo has a better game here than Woodruff.
The only problem with Castillo is that he's going to be a little tired because he doesn't ever pitch at night.
It's true. It's really, really true. He pitches so many big games. But I mean, look at Castillo. He had the one blip game against Cleveland. This is a guy who's put up 20 fantasy points in every other start, or 18 or more in the last 11 starts. I mean, he's been unbelievably good. And Milwaukee, sure, there's a couple tough pieces of their lineup. They're not where they are right now because of their hitting. They're where they are because they're pitching in their bullpen. The starters in their bullpen. I actually think Castillo is an awesome tournament play. The problem is, we've said that about a lot of guys today. The only thing that's weird about him is that he's so consistent. It almost doesn't make sense why no one's picking up on this. I mean, seriously, do yourself a favor and look at his game log and try and tell me this guy isn't a monster. It doesn't make any sense to me. If you have a guy who feels that sure for 20 to 35 fantasy points, who's 9,300, sign me up.
It's just that because the slate's loaded. You know what I mean? Just because you have Ohtani lower, you have Ray lower. You know what I mean?
think that's part of it, but I've seen this guy consistently too low owned, except for when they had the
Right.
games in the day game last time out against Miami.
Yeah.
And I will just go ahead and say right now, if you're asking me, I'll take the over 5.5 on the K props. That will be one of my bets of the day. By the way, I may not have been crushing DFS over this last month, but my bets of the day have been pretty on point. I have to say, I've been they've been pretty good. They haven't been right every day, but they've been really you're getting I'm not kidding, 85% of the time probably.
I've put up a lot of volume. I have one bet for the season in baseball, and I'm 1-0. So there you go. Lots of volume there.
Well, I can't argue with your win percentage. You
ROI, hashtag ROI. Okay. You like any of the hitting here or no?
No.
Okay. All right. So
before, I just want to say it's not the hugest slate in the world, and we did find other spots to get different. Tyler Naquin is still 2,700 and crushing the ball. Should be batting at the top of the order. So I guess Tyler Naquin I do like. That's it.
So Blake Snell is 7,500, and Walker Buehler is 9,700. And any chance I could? I'm sure I might have to twist your arm, but any chance I can interest you in some Dodgers from the hitting side? Because I have a certain degree of interest in that. Now, again, whenever you see Snell pitch, and whenever he's pitching to lefties, it looks like he's unhittable. You know what I mean? Like when he's doing well. And so my vision is always, oh my God, I always want these Dodgers lefties, but I don't want to play them against other lefties. But if you get one of those games where Snell, exhausts his pitches and is off the plate, or whatever it is, or the Dodgers are going to be no owned, and you get the Dodgers no owned, I think you always have to take a shot. So I'm gonna force in some Dodgers. I don't even actually have to force them in. I actually come up with them a little bit as playable. So for me, Buehler, unfortunately, is just the same story. For me, he looks great. Probably he's always the best pitcher on the slate.
Definitely the best pitcher. I don't even think this season.
I mean, maybe it's not the best spot or whatever it is, but he's always the best pitcher on the slate. And he's just always in a position where he's just not going to project for the possibility of the ceiling that I need. So I'm not going to be playing him. I'm not going to play Snell. I'll probably play some Dodgers though.
Yeah, I actually think Buehler he's on. I'm sorry, I hate to have so many guys on my list, but he is one of them. I don't know really. I know it's a tough matchup and all the stuff. I just can't point out enough that this guy just does it every single game. And there's really we try to figure out these other guys, and the hardest thing lately is to try and figure out pitchers and consistency. Buehler just doesn't have bad games. He really doesn't. He could now. Saying that, I probably cursed him for tonight. He probably has a rough one, but I'll just weigh my pitchers at the end of this because it's going to be hard. There's a lot of pitching on this slate. Now, I will say, as a person who watched it in person, as a person who watched it for 2 games in the World Series, and as I said earlier in the season, and I played him in that spot on a full slate, and he actually pitched really well because that time I think he was in the 6 Ks possibly against the Dodgers. Put up 21 fantasy points against them last time. I played Snell against the Dodgers. I went the other way. His 2 starts against the Dodgers this year, I believe he's given up a total of 2 runs, maybe 3 runs. No, sorry, 3 starts against the Dodgers. I think he's given up 3 runs. It doesn't feel like something I want to try to go after. I'm saying I literally think that this San Diego saw the World Series. He is the exact type of pitcher the Dodgers struggle with. Now, when I say that, that was pre-Trey Turner, pre-AJ Pollock being back to his old form. So I think those are the guys you'd be trying to dial in on, would be Pollock, Turner, both Turners, and then you'd play maybe one of the lefties. This is not a night where I'd want to go crazy with the lefties against him personally. And you could argue that Pujols has been good as a Dodger against lefties. Like, you could argue for him at minimum cost. He's only going to get it ever so many at bats as he's in the game. Actually, they'll probably bring in their lefties in the bullpen too. So Pujols might even been staying longer because the Padres don't want to mess with the Dodger lefties. And this is a big game. So I fully expect, I don't know. Snell, even if he's in trouble, you have it's a 1 and 1A. Tampa Bay and San Diego have the 2 best bullpens in baseball. I don't think it's even debatable, and I don't really want to mess with them in general. I will probably have a few Dodger pieces like the ones I mentioned in certain spots, but for the most part, I honestly, if we didn't talk about it as I was pitching, I'd be talking about Blake Snell today. That's how much what I thought about him, and you can't look at it in the BVP because they don't show the postseason numbers in those. But he was dazzling. And I honestly think Tampa Bay may have won the World Series, or certainly had gotten to a game 7 had they not pulled Snell out too early with 70 pitches in the 7th inning of the game, where I think he had 1 hitter going. This is a weird one. We're going to have to sum this up, Sheets, because there is a lot of.
I have Snell on par with those other guys. I have Snell on par with Josiah Gray as a sub 8K guy. I mean, they're totally different, right?
I feel like, go ahead.
I mean, they're exactly different. You know what I mean? Snell's a proven guy. He's, kind of a tougher matchup, but he's still under 8K. I have them similar, so I have Snell in play.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's wrap this up. So for me, pitchers, it honestly is close between 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 guys. I mean, but I'll just rank them. Ohtani, then Cabrera, then I have Woodruff, Wheeler together. Then I have Ray, Gray, and Snell together. When it comes to hitting, again, do as I say, not as I do. Minnesota I have ranked the top one. Then I have Boston, Texas, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh, but I'm going to be definitely playing more Cleveland and Texas than the field, which isn't saying a lot. And I will throw in a couple of Dodgers just in Bobby's on.
Yeah, I'm going to just go out on a limb and say, look, if Hernandez goes out there and beats me, he beats me. I'm sorry, Cabrera. I keep saying Hernandez because I keep thinking of the saddest story ever. I just think this is, in my opinion, I would consider this a tournament flaw to play Cabrera. Now, that's just me. Maybe I'll change my mind by the end of the day. There's plenty of guys to spend down on. I've got 7 pitchers that have got easily 30 plus upside. Now, if you think Cabrera is going to do that in his first start, go ahead and play him. I don't see how that happens. And I think when you have this much upside from your pitchers, including Josiah Gray on the other side, who can get to that number, I mean, that's just my personal first look, is that if this guy's going to be high owned, it's a mistake to play him. I like Wheeler. I think Ray makes a lot of sense the way he's pitched, but I actually will probably end up just fading him as well. I think Buehler, another tough matchup. I like Ohtani, but I don't know that I want to play him at high ownership. So if I want to fade Ohtani and Cabrera, I do think Ohtani has such a good matchup for him, his pitch type especially, that it might be harder for me to get off that one. But I like the Castillo idea. I really don't know where I settle. I know I feel the best about Wheeler, and I know I feel the best probably about safety, I guess. it's tricky with Giolito, Bueller. I think it's probably Bueller, even in a tough matchup. I mean, it's really, really tough. I like a lot of these other guys. If it's a slate where I might mix around my pitching a little bit. I think that it's Wheeler than a bunch of other guys. If I was playing cash, I think it's Wheeler and Ray for me. But even that feels risky. I don't know. I just think there's a lot of other ways to go other than playing the Cabrera Ohtani. That's my strongest take. And I think Josiah Gray has monster upside at low ownership. And I think Castillo has terrific upside and a pretty high floor at low ownership. And I think Pivetta has the upside at low ownership.
I would say it's my last take. I would definitely prefer Wheeler over Woodruff. That would be my.
Yeah, I don't even have Woodruff on my list.
All right. So
real quick batter, we pick hitters because I know we got to go, but we do have to touch 10:05 or 10:10 or whatever. But I like the Angel. The Cleveland stands out to me the most. Boston, the Angels, and the White Sox are probably my main stacks. And I know it sounds weird against the Robbie Ray thing. I know he's been better this year, but I love this play, and I've been waiting for one spot to try and attack something that I think that a team that can get to him should be the White Sox with this righty power against the lefty. I really, really like the spot. And I like the idea of the Baltimore mini, the Toronto mini, and the Pittsburgh, Arizona minis to go with my Boston, Cleveland, LA. And then probably, one major build with White Sox that I sort of shift around. That's where I'm at.
All right. Sounds good. Bobby, take care of your business. Maybe 15, 20 minutes, whenever you're ready. We'll do golf.
All right, buddy.